Welcome to Close Listening. I'm your host, Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. I wonder if it's worth clarifying something. So I call this Close Listening because I like the idea of listening to an album with passion, listening to it from beginning to end, taking the tracks as seriously as possible. But I've recently been getting all these bizarre YouTube comments that, are phrased in this kind of condescending way. Where they're kind of like, I can't believe you would make a video not knowing X about the artist. And the kind of funny thing is they never say what X is. They just sort of imply they're so much smarter than me. So let's be clear about something. These are not video essays. I'm not passing myself off as having a PhD on this kind of stuff, but I just like being a normal, wondering mind, enjoying my music and talking about it. So if you have a mean comment this time, joke's on you because you clearly did not watch the first few seconds of this video. All right, so a few months ago, I was watching a video by a guy who does get closer to the video essay format, and that's the professor of rock. And he was talking about Bryan Ferry and Roxy Music, and particularly their record, Avalon. So this is the CD I'm going to be reacting to today. And Roxy Music is a band I suppose I would have seen in lists of artists of the 70s and artists who were associated with others I liked, but I never really had a sense of who they were. And possibly from the bit of reading I did about Avalon, I might have made a bad choice in this regard because Roxy Music are often described as an art rock group, and I feel like Avalon maybe toned that tendency down. But anyway, this is an acclaimed album by this important group, and I wanted to see what it was all about. And the professor of rock recommended this one in particular. So let's see how Roxy Music's Avalon goes. All right, so the first song on this album, probably the best, and I couldn't tell if I recognized this one or I just sort of recognized the feel of it. It was called More Than This. It just has this beautiful sound that when I listened to it a bit closely, it just felt like it was at this perfect in-between point. You can sort of hear the synth, so it sort of has this modern, magical feel to it, but you can also still hear the folk instruments. So for people who don't like things too digital, it's like that perfect balance, that perfect combination. And this was supposedly influenced by Bryan Ferry spending some time on the Irish coast. And I imagine there's a stronger sense of this for people who are in the British Isles. But I don't know, I guess the sense around Ireland is that even if it's this today English-speaking place, that it's somehow more green, more mystical than a lot of the English-speaking world. So that's just the general sense you get from this song. Now, the actual song's meaning is kind of vague. I could feel at the time there was no way of knowing. Fallen leaves at the night, who can say where they're blowing? So it's this lyric about doubt. And, maybe Ireland is just a country like any others. Maybe it doesn't have magical properties, but, we want there to be magical properties. And this song is about that search for them, even if we can't put them quite into words. The next song on the album is called The Space Between. So this one struck me as having more of an 80s sound because of the way the drum was used, some of the drum fills. It doesn't have the long sweeping vocal notes and falsetto of More Than This. It's just sort of more laid back and cool with big drums. The lyrics to the song are quite minimal, and it actually surprised me when I looked them up how few of them there are. But it seems like one of Bryan Ferry's tricks is when he does draw out notes in the song, he can make lyrics that are quite minimal feel like they're very resonant. So there's just one line where he just says, "The way I see," simple lyrics, nothing special about them, but he makes them sound quite beautiful. Track 3 is called Avalon, and I would say this is the other one that sticks out other than More Than This. It opens with some acoustic percussion. So far, I like what the album's doing. Every song really sounds a little different than the others. And then finally, I think Bryan Ferry's voice is put in the mix in a way I like. The one thing I possibly don't like about More Than This, it's the same thing I don't like about Michael Jackson's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Sometimes the voice is so high and beautiful, it just kind of becomes an instrument with the sound. And then you kind of think, well, I might as well just listen to instrumental music. If you're going to sing, separate the voice a bit, articulate the words so it really sounds like a singer's in there. So that's a matter of taste. But one thing I do like about Avalon is that Ferry's voice is very loud and clear and distinct from the music, though it still has a very smooth sound. And it feels like it's continuing this theme, though, of not quite being able to put things into words, a search of an ambiguous feeling. But this time it's framing that through the medium of dance. So some might see dance as having meaning, being expressive. Sometimes in an indie movie where they don't know what else to do, they will just have a dance scene, like in the conclusion of Jojo Rabbit. Can't quite imagine what Jojo and Elsa's freedom is like, so they just have them dance to Bowie's freedom. So that's kind of what they're doing in this song of Avalon. There's this search for meaning, this search for love, and it can really only be expressed through movement. And since we're not watching the dance here, it can only be expressed through the song about the movement. Now, I sensed both from the cover and just the vague aura around the world that Avalon had some sort of medieval-ish meaning to it. So see this woman who's apparently Brian Ferry's fiance wearing this helmet. There you go. So Avalon, apparently it's this mystical island where King Arthur's body is sent. I guess the theme of this album is sort of looking for this magical place, but it's a place you can't quite access because you have to be dead to be there. The next track is called India, and that was an instrumental. Nothing about it really stuck with me. Just felt like a sort of natural transition between tracks 3 and tracks 5. Track 5 is called While My Heart Is Still Beating. And it continues the instrumental feel of India for a while. I had to check my CD player to realize that the track had changed. It uses loud drums to signify a heartbeat sound, and there's something about it that struck me as kind of having a non-Western sound, though I couldn't be more specific than that. The lyrics themselves, they seem like a journey from ego to confession to self-doubt. So it starts with all these people everywhere, ever so needing. Where's it all leading? But then it eventually goes to, I better be strong now. I better stop dreaming. My heart is flown away now. Will it never stop the bleeding? So you can see it goes from, maybe criticizing other people to criticizing the narrator himself. Track 6 is the main thing, and kind of like track 2, this one had more of an overt 80s feel to it. But then again, the sound is still a bit of a mix of different sounds. So it's not quite, robotic drum loops. You can hear some percussion from a guiro or a guiro-like instrument. It feels like I would describe this song as the spiritual journey following the pained self-questioning of While My Heart Is Still Beating. So the singer goes at one point, look at my hand, there's a soul on fire. You can lead me even higher. So personal suffering actualizing into something redeeming, something soul-saving, whatever that means. Track number 7 is called Take a Chance With Me. It's the first what I'd call lyrically typical song on the record, and that if you just look up the lyrics, it has a decent amount of chorus and verse. It's not just Ferry using his crooner's voice to stretch out a few lyrics. So this sound, it came across as the epitome of what makes Ferry unique as a performer. That on the one hand, his aesthetic is that he's a crooner, he's someone of the pre-rock and roll age, but the music behind him is kind of the late rock and roll age with the intense synths. So even if this one didn't stand out for me as much as More Than This, in a way it almost felt like a better representation of Ferry's sound from the limited bit I know of him. And I did like the keyboard riff in it, even if the overall song didn't do too much for me. Track number 8 is called Turn You On. So while I was listening to this, I was thinking about Cat Stevens, and he sometimes does this thing where he gets very melodramatic with his singing dynamics. Oh, I'm on my way, I know I am. And sometimes I copy that in my singing, and I've had people tell me, stop trying to sound like Cat Stevens. It can kind of sound silly when you do it too much. So Ferry, with his sort of mellow synth drenched sound, he's not going with the intensity of a Cat Stevens, but you can hear more vocal dynamics in this song. So I think it's one of the things that gives it a bit more life than some of the other tracks on the album. And again, Ferry does a good job of bringing richness into short, punchy lyrics. Then I wonder, is it fair? Now you're on your own. Who cares about you? Except me. God help me. Doesn't sound particularly poetic when you read it, but it sounds very poetic when he delivers it. Track number 9 is called True to Life. This one, again, reminds me of sort of quintessential 80s, and it brings out the more intense side of that. So a punchy synth bass, loud, echoey drums. Ferry himself, though, is a very relaxed sound in his singing. And when I look at the meaning in this song, I feel like it's about wanting medieval glory, but settling for ordinary walking through your city adventures. It's amazing times have changed in days of old, but imagination leave you standing out in the cold. The lyrics also make a regular reference to a diamond lady. You know, all I could imagine is that this is the embodiment of fantasy grandeur, this inachievable thing he wants. It's possible it has a more specific meaning, but I wasn't able to find right away what the diamond lady is. So if you know, feel free to put that in the comments. Track 10 is another instrumental. It's called Tara. This one stood out to me more than India. Supposedly saxophone was a big part of earlier Roxy music records, and that's the primary instrument on this track, and you hear it over moving waves. So this whole album is kind of about not quite having the words to express oneself. And finally, at the end, it just gives up on words entirely, and it gives us what, in the context of this album, as a new instrument, keeps it simple, nice and beautiful. The album can now only articulate itself through notes on the saxophone, and those notes are playing over gently rocking ocean waves as the boat takes you to Avalon. So overall, I'm glad I tried this one out. I'm not sure if the album as a whole was that much of a hit to me. I mean, I liked Tara as a conclusion, though it's not a great standalone song, but certainly more than this at the very beginning. You can see why that one's a classic. And Avalon, a bit below that, but really liked the way Ferry's vocals came across on it. So those two tracks in particular stood out for me, and maybe I'll check out more Roxy music going forward. Anyway, I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.